You're listening to The Adventuring Party. Talking about gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Savage.
And I'm Shane.
And this week we are stitching together an episode out of a mailbag piece we recorded on the front of a soon-to-be Paddy's Day special episode, and then we're going to talk about some news. So if you hear a whole bunch of references to St. Paddy's Day being yesterday, that's because mostly me getting far too enthusiastic about the fact that we were recording our special for Paddy's Day. So if you'd like, you can treat this one as a prelude, a preview of our Paddy's Day episode, which we'll be putting out the day after St. Paddy's Day, which is going to be March 18th. Isn't that right, Shane?
Yeah, that's right. And also, we might actually get some pretty good numbers in this episode because there's nothing else happening those few days.
So it'll be a chance to sort of soothe your brow and listen in on our Paddy's Day special. So this episode is going to be a reaction to the ton of mailbag responses that we got through SpeakPipe. So we just want to thank everybody who called in and left a message or two or three, and this was in response to our Vancian Magic episode, so we'll be recapping some of the stuff we talked about last week in the Vancian Magic episode, but you'll be hearing stuff referring just a little bit to next week's episode, which is our St. Paddy's Day special. So we'll cut here. I'll throw in a little bit of interlude music or something, and the next thing you hear will be us going through the mailbag. And then after that, we'll cut back to now, which is, I'm getting very confused.
With time travel.
We'll cut back to now, and we're going to do just a quick roundup of some of the news that is news here at the start of March. So, take us through the time travel vortex, Shane. Yeah, so if you recall, we set up basically a voicemail service called SpeakPipe.
Yeah, it is SpeakPipe. It's an interesting little experiment in getting people to talk to us. It's partly the in the thing with the podcast crowd right now, and we're nothing if not shameless trend chasers.
So in the interest of self-promotion, we reached out to a couple of podcasts that we've been listening to, and some of them were very good and came back to us and had some things to say about our Vancian Magic episode, which you recall, that was episode 581, something like that.
Yeah.
Because we've got 581 episodes under our belt and we're still behaving like this.
It's almost like the turnover of hosts means a certain loss in decorum.
It's a hive mind. We're unkillable. Unteachable as well, but unkillable.
Yeah.
Perfect, really.
Right. So
we're
do we...
orcs of podcasting. So yeah, let's listen to our first message. And hold on. I suppose I should click on it. So let's go.
Editors will remove all of the horrible clicking noises.
Yeah, so here we go. Our first message.
Which means they'll probably just edit you out.
I should be editing myself out. So we're going to go to our first message, which was from Pete Jones, who is a host on The Purple Worm.
Yeah.
So we're going to listen to him now. God, we're really good at this, aren't we?
Hi guys, this is Pete Jones from the Purple Worm podcast. I've just been listening to your latest episode on Vancian Magic. Great episode, and I'm glad that our little podcast has inspired you to pick up the subject. Really enjoyed it. But I do have one little item to bring up. Now, you mentioned the Purple Worm podcast, and you said it's an English podcast. Shock horror? My fellow Celts calling me English? Come on, guys. It's an English language podcast, but me, I'm Welsh. But thanks very much anyway. Keep up the good work, and I'm now following your podcast and look forward to listening to more episodes.
Pete, we are so sorry.
I'm not sorry. I'm delighted to find another Celt out there bringing hot Celtic opinions into the Anglosphere. Pete, yes, I do apologise.
No one should have to be accused of being English in this day and age.
No, even if we must deal with them on this our sacred day. But of course, if we didn't have the English sharing in celebration with us, it'd be a much less interesting Paddy's Day, and that goes doubly for the Welsh and the Scots out there.
And all of those Irish Americans.
All of those Irish Americans who we all have a few squirreled away somewhere on the family tree. Yeah, thanks, Pete, for calling in. We're delighted to have sort of found some kindred souls in the podcasting sphere, because there are an awful lot of Americans out there. You know who you are. But Anchor certainly seems to have been a flourishing ground for lots and lots of excellent podcasts.
Yeah, the phenomenon of guerrilla podcasting in particular is an interesting one. But I think we might that might come up in some of the other episodes we have to.
Anyway, Pete, can't wait to hear more from you, and we'll be listening in to the Purple Worms in future. So let's move on to the next one.
Hey guys, my name's Jason. I do a podcast over at Anchor, Nerds RPG Varietycast. I heard about you through Conrad of Send 3 and 4 Pence podcast. And I just listened to your Advancing Magic episode, really enjoyed it. Now I have a decade's worth of back episodes to listen to. I don't know if I should look forward to that or not. I think I should. So I'm definitely going to do that. Luckily, you guys don't talk too fast, so I can listen to you on 1.5 speed, so it's not too horrible. You don't have, an accent, so it's all good. Anyhow, I really enjoyed your thoughts. Stormbringer, the original version, is one of my favorite Magic systems and settings. They don't worry about balance at all in there. It's a great game. It's a pretty fatal game, but it's a fun game. But I really enjoyed your thoughts, and I think there's something there that Magic. In my games, Magic should always be a dangerous thing. It's more the Call of Cthulhu side of it, and kind of what you guys were alluding to, the idea that every time you cast a spell, you're potentially bringing the world, closer to the end, and demons are involved, or maybe there are only so many spells and that kind of thing. I really like that, but I'm more of a swords and sorcery guy. I run Barbarians, Lemuria, and games like that. So Magic's usually a bad thing in those. But anyhow, I really enjoyed your podcast, and I'll call you guys again. Take care.
Well,
thank you, Jason. That was one of those Irish Americans you were so,
I guess,
cruelly lambasting.
Oh dear,
Shane.
Well, he was a lambast us. We don't have. Since when do we not have accents? I don't know.
Oh, we have some sort of accent. I had my accent trained out of me by ruthless elocutioners. Yeah, they shocked it out of me over the course of several intense sessions, which is why I sound like Terry Wogan, at least according to me. Terry Wogan, another incredibly famous, erudite and charismatic Irish broadcaster, forced to work in the English system.
Yeah.
So, obviously in solidarity with Terry Wogan and all other accentless podcasters, we thank you, Jason, for your comments. Although let's actually talk about the meat of what Jason had to say, which was some excellent stuff about bloody dangerous magic. I think he's absolutely right. Dare you disagree?
I feel like it's a taste, as I said in the thing, as I said in the episode itself. Dangerous magic. Well, did I say it no? I think Conrad said it, and I just realized that saying his points was pointless. But yes, dangerous magic is a perfectly fine taste, but it does not need to be the only taste, and it is perfectly fine to say magic's just tool. It's reliable, but that means you're going for a very specific flavor, and having unpredictable magic is perfectly fine, as long as that's the tone you're looking for.
I think you can slice that pie a couple of ways. I play a lot of D&D, although I do like other systems. Stormbringer is, as Jason says, an excellently, epically lethal system, and you only ever pull magic out when you absolutely have to, when you've got no other choice. Which is something that is completely counter to D&D, where it's like, what's the first thing we do? Cast Fireball or cast Invisibility or cast Sleep. I think that's fine, and as a toolbox for players that have a reliable set of tools that do what they know they're going to do, great. I do think on the GM side of the screen, you have some liberties to introduce some dangerous magic. Yeah. So because the players have been schooled in magic, they've learned the Hogwarts approved version of all this stuff. But some lethal renegade with nothing to lose might decide to bust all of the safety protocols out, and start casting crazy magic that has very little chance of not rending reality into flitters, I say.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. It's like there's sort of this lingering idea from Third Ed and other earlier editions that NPCs and PCs should work exactly the same way. That
I think
the classes are the only way to, like, the magic user in the book is the only type of magic user there is, but there's absolutely nothing stopping you say that there is high forbidden magic and the guy who lives in the tower is operating on a completely different level that you don't actually want to have.
No, it's burns bright but not for very long sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, we should probably move on then. We've got a mountain to climb now.
Yeah.
We have something of an epic from John Large. So we're just going to listen to this and we'll see if we can remember which points we should be responding to. Okay.
Hello lads, I've just started listening to your podcast. This is John from the Red Dice Diaries, also one of the co-hosts of the Purple Worm podcast, and I've been enjoying your episode about Vancian magic. And as you say, there's an awful lot of meat left on that Vancian bone. It's one of the unfortunate things about podcasting that I think sometimes, we can't always fit everything into one episode. But I think, to refer to one of your earlier comments in the episode, you're absolutely right. I think that some of what people see as limitations on it are actually a feature. So you mentioned, for instance, that maybe you don't know what sort of dungeon you're going into, and it's a bit of a guessing game what spells you're taking. Well, yeah, in the early days when you just rocked up to Misk Dungeon, I think that might have been a thing. But I think nowadays, now there's a bit more sort of in between sort of stuff going on. I think, well, sorry for the traffic noise at the bus stop in the morning. Nowadays, I think that you could actually, as a player group, investigate the dungeon, do a little bit of sort of in-character like prep before you go to a dungeon, find out what legends are going on, stuff like that, which is great for bards and other sort of characters who excel in finding out that sort of myths and legends and stuff like that. And once you've found out that, you can then use that sort of information to base what you pick your spells on. So if there's lots of local legends about, it's a haunted area, or perhaps, again, sorry about the traffic, or perhaps it's the lair of some goblins. Maybe you think, maybe I want to take a sleep spell, maybe I want to take this spell, maybe I want to take that spell, and you can very much sort of incorporate that whole research element into helping you pick your spells. So, like I say, I think it's a feature, but very much enjoying the podcast. I'm going to get back to the episode now, guys. Keep up the good work. I'll catch you soon. Hey there, guys. It's John again from the Red Dice Diaries, continuing to listen to your Vancian magic episode. I would say one of my gripes with D&D when it comes to magic, and it's something that you've touched on in your episode, is that a lot of the non-magic using classes, so your rangers, your paladins, stuff like that, actually when you get to a higher level, they do get spells. So in a sense, after a certain level, everyone pretty much starts becoming a wizard, albeit a bit of a piss poor version by comparison to an actual wizard. And that sort of takes away from the uniqueness of the various spellcasting classes, of which there's already a fair few in later editions. It's one of the reasons why I prefer the approach that is espoused by the game Castles and Crusades, where pretty much the only classes that have magic are wizards, druids, clerics, and illusionists. And it's obviously based on the D&D model. So just want to drop that in. I'm going to get back to the episode. Catch you in a bit.
Oh.
Okay, thanks, John. Some very good points there. I think the two main ones being about the sort of guessing game nature of going into dungeons as a spellcaster, and then the trouble with higher levels in D&D, more of the classes get access to spells that sort of take away from the uniqueness of being a wizard.
Those are, the sort of long-standing problems. The second one, I think, is mainly because they designed a spell system, but they didn't design as many systems for non-spell users, so it just seemed like a natural fit to a designer in a rush to just give someone extra spells and hope that
the sort of tiers that, the heavy spellcasters get spells at the lower levels, they're top tier spellcasters, then later on, your 12th level paladin, here's a few spells, or your 19th level ranger, okay, you can finally cast Woodwalker or something like that. It is a bit of a meh. I think perhaps they should have remained as class abilities.
Yeah, like that kind of leads to the problem of cruft, is that the more different abilities you have in your thing, the more footprint of rules that you have to do, and that's what
the internet is for.
Well, yeah,
and obsessives.
Yeah, but it's more that because spells already exist, it's just natural to kind of fall back on them. But I do think that we probably end up with stronger classes if you make something unique for each of them. Which, when you have 20 levels of stuff to work out, might not be the easiest thing. But and I think it is a good target to take, is rather than just rely on just everyone getting the same thing.
So before I go to John's first point, which I really liked his solution, obviously the Red Dice Diaries podcast, I've given it a listen, it's great. My wife was especially tickled by the name John. She got the reference. I had to ask her a few pointed questions, but that was an interesting evening. But the guessing game aspect of going into dungeon, I really, it didn't occur to me at the time, but John is absolutely correct. Dungeons don't exist in a vacuum. They've been there forever, and people know about them. So they sort of say things like, well, I wouldn't go up there without a wicker charm, because that's the only way to stay safe up there. So you go, why wicker charms? What's affected by wicker? And you'll start doling out information that would allow players to make informed choices about the spells they take into the wicker dungeon.
Absolutely, so long as the DM has integrated the dungeon to their world design and has pulled the legends out to be seeded as rumors, which
it's a process you can work backwards from pretty quickly. I mean, let's presume your GM has the dungeon in front of them and can look at, and it's not a very bog standard dungeon. It has some features.
Mm-hmm.
Each those major rooms, the room with the iron golem in it, and the room with the poisonous waterfall in it.
Yeah.
Those, I mean, if you just use, I need to integrate something about poisoned water into a local legend. Well, that's not hard to do.
Yeah.
Waters used to farm in this location resulted in blighted crops.
Yeah. But that's the thing, is just it sort of...
It can be quite vague, but you could give your players some clues.
Of course, but it is something that the GM has to prepare. It's an approach I think works best if the GM has willing to put the work in to construct, to integrate the dungeon. It's not so good if you're the kind of GM who just wants to pick a module off the shelf, plop it down in front of a bunch of new players, have them all start rolling their stats 3d6 in order and just play.
Well, what I'd say there is that if it's an off-the-shelf dungeon, it should come with an off-the-shelf list of local rumours and legends.
That's very true.
The other thing that occurred to me based on what John was talking about is that utility spells kind of shine in these situations.
Mm-hmm.
Having Dimension Door or Shape Earth or Purify Food and Water, these are good utility spells that often get overlooked because they don't have a damage output or a sort of an area of control effect on the battlefield. But because Dungeons and Dragons has these three pillars of social, combat and exploration is about having the right tools to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles, and that's where a lot of those utility spells shine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's just that because the exploration and social are less rules defined, it people don't grasp onto the utility of these things quite as quickly as they do for something that does numbers of effect.
On the exploration front, less rules defined now, but TSR put out entire books dealing with just dungeon exploration and just wilderness exploration. You're looking at them now.
I think I can see up in the corner
they are some of the
second ed Dungeoneer survival guide.
Yeah, they're some of the few books I go to again and again to kind of get ideas for how to challenge players without resorting to here's a bunch of hit points you have to whittle away at.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to our last entry in the. We'll move on to the last deposit in our mail Vault Speak Pipe, which comes from Miyagi Yoda.
Hi guys, Miyagi Yoda from South Africa here. Just want to say I've actually enjoyed your content so far, and please keep up the good work. We're out here, we're listening, we're just very, very quiet. Have you considered Discord server? Seems to be all the rage in the podcasting communities these days.
Well, Miyagi Yoda, thank you very much. Céad Míle Fáilte from the Emerald Isle to the South Africa. I hear the Guinness down there is pretty damn good, especially when you combine it with the local rum.
Oh.
A Dragon's Blood, I think they're called.
Oh, wow.
It meant they're very strong. You know a lot of its strong drinks, Shane.
I've been known to put some rum in my vodka.
No more than yesterday. That is Paddy's Day. Miyagi Yoda, thank you. We're delighted that we have a South African listener who is enjoying the podcast. We obviously leaning on our Irishness today, but we hope that the sort of stuff we talk about around gaming and D&D and generally sort of anything that happens on a tabletop that is fun, that isn't your dinner, is of interest to our listeners. And thank you for calling in. We hope to hear from you again.
And just if you're interested in having a Discord for which to discuss adventuring party, you might want to check out our show notes, because we've been having a few ideas on this front. Don't want to definitely say that we have everything worked out by the time the episode goes live.
If you go to the show notes right now, you will definitely find a link to our Discord server where you can join us to discuss this episode and other aspects of gaming.
And other promises from Savage that are definitely come true.
Absolutely going to happen by the time this goes live. So I'm not hedging any bets. This is a promise you can take to the bank. You can put it in the bank. You can let it mature. You can draw down promise interest on it. You can spend that promise interest on Discourse. I'm not really sure how this works, but I'm told it's for talking to people. So you'll be able to talk to us there. Okay, well we've emptied out the mailbag in one fell swoop because we are reckless.
Yeah.
So if you would like to talk to... So we're going to move into the meat of this episode now.
50 minutes in.
20 minutes in.
Oh,
well, we're accounting for editing. But we're going to move into the meat.
I see the listener numbers falling already.
And I'll remind you again after we've gnawed your ear off about the actual topic of this episode. But if you would like to leave us a message, please head over to SpeakPipe. We'll leave a link in the show notes, obviously. Or you can drop comments on Facebook, on YouTube, where we're now putting up stuff. Keep an eye on the YouTube channel, because I'm producing a title card for each of the episodes that hopefully you'll find amusing on occasion. We had the Vancian Magic one had one of those awesome 70s vans covered in wizards, which I thought was just a beautiful visual pun.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of myself, obviously, and so is my mum.
So that was all of our mailbag, or voice bag. We have a voluminous bag for voice messages as well as for all of the mail we get.
Well, I think we lucked out now in finding so many great podcasters and other members of the Adventure Party Diaspora to come back to us on Vancian Magic. We'll probably, obviously, we'll keep SpeakPipe open, and we'll drop a link in show notes for any episodes we do. If we do a topic that you find interesting, we'd love to hear from you, and we'll probably do another one of these as soon as we've accrued a couple of responses from people.
A few little chats.
Exactly. But in the meantime, we're going to talk. It's the start of March, pretty much. We're just a little past the first week in March now, and it's time to just do a quick roundup on some of the biggest news items in tabletop games. Let's start with one of yours.
The only thing that's larger than in a gaming sphere than Matt Mercer and his ilk is our pointless expansions to Munchkin. And would you believe it, both those things have come together into one giant gelatinous mass.
It's like two of my least favourite things. I can't believe this. When is he going to stop consuming game systems with his critical rolling? So
it's our fault. We're the sinners here. We kept buying Munchkin, and this was the inevitable result.
Yeah, I think this is a disaster, long time in the making. Would it be fair to say that Munchkin is kind of gaming's version of climate change? Like the roots of the problem stem way back into the past, but we're seeing more and more effects now, and we've to live with the accrued damage that's been done.
We're supposed to be a positive podcast. We're supposed to be celebrating all of the wonderful things. And
okay, so you take me through it. What is this, and what do I need to do to get away from it?
Just don't buy it. Okay, so
but it's going to be another version of Munchkin. It's going to be
yes. So for the 3 people on Mars who don't know, Munchkin is a popular battle game parodying a D&D style play through a card game. The point is to race to become level 10 by killing monsters and taking their stuff. And this basic formula and its extremely casual nature have kept it going and going for, I'm going to say, nearly 20 years now. It's keeping John Kovalic in
well, I was going to ask, is John Kovalic going to illustrate this?
Let me see.
Because that's the great appeal of Munchkin, isn't it, really? It's John Kovalic's cute little illustrations. He's illustrated, must be nearly all of them at this point, right?
90% of them. There's a few where apparently he wasn't available, or they decided they needed a different style. But I don't see anything saying he isn't illustrating this one, so I'm just going to assume he is.
So presumably it'll feature the characters from Critical Role on prominent cards, and a whole bunch of in-jokes, things that have happened in the...
Why mess with the formula? Like, Munchkin has built itself on the back of in-jokes, and like from the very first set, it was always about double diving into... It was a combination of gameplay that anyone could play, and the in-jokes that nerds especially would get, and would raise eyebrows by the newer players who wouldn't get the jokes, and thus allowing other people to explain them, which is the other favourite activity of many nerds.
Okay, well, more power to them. We'll have to see where they go next.
This is, I think, promised to be the first of a few licensed board games. So, I'm not, or perhaps that was just a rumour I saw, but I believe there may be more coming, which isn't hardly a terrible thing. Lots of licensed games have turned out wonderful. I still have very fond memories of the Battlestar Galactica kicking off the Traitor board game.
Oh yes, Traitor Mechanics. I'm pretty sure it was preceded by that Arthurian version, but...
Hold on. I'm pretty sure it's called Avalon, or...
That's the one, yeah.
Shadows over Camelot.
Shadows over Camelot, okay. All right, well, they march on, now conquering Munchkin. It is a very, would we say that Munchkin is as generic as they come in terms of games?
Well, that's one of its major strengths, isn't it?
Speaking of generic things, I'm segueing.
You found something in the great gamosphere that sets off your generic alarm.
Well, yes, and it's with some regret, I have to say, because I'm quite a fan. Cyberpunk is my second favourite Cyberpunk RPG. My first famously being Shadowrun. But they're going to put out a new edition.
To coincide with the best-selling future game by the makers of Witcher.
Yeah, so the new Cyberpunk 2077 game from the guys who brought us the Witcher computer game. And they've just released the cover for Cyberpunk Red. And I gotta say, I looked at this and thought, is that it? That's the best you could do?
Can I just give an attempt to describe this?
Yeah, well, we'll put a link in the show notes, but go ahead. Give us the word magic.
It's a city.
Mm-hmm.
There's lights, lots of twinkly lights and big I assume Megacorp logos. There's a bunch of flying cars, mostly flying in extremely nice lines. And there is a lady in the foreground sitting atop a motorcycle with a gun, and she's just kind of looking at this. Actually, I think she might be looking slightly to the right off screen. And that's it.
Yeah, that's it. You've said everything that's in the picture. She's sitting on a bike and holding a gun, and that is it.
And I think the most the greatest question that this cover asks is, how did she get a motorbike on top of a skyscraper? Did she take the stairs, or did she find an elevator big enough?
She probably used magnets. No,
or nanotechnology. I hear that does a lot of things.
So I just look at this
in the cyberpunk future.
So I mean, it would not have been. There's an even lazier thing you can do here, which would simply be to take some of the artwork from the game and splatter it across the cover. Really tying the two properties together. And because the name of the company escapes me, because the publisher are Talisorian, because they've been working so closely with CD Projekt Red, like that shouldn't have been a hard licensing or kind of legal thing to do. This is a sort of generically well executed cover, but there's no real action to it. You've got a figure who is neither looking at the background nor looking at the viewer. I'm not going to say I could do any better, but I've seen much better rendering and rendition and much more interesting poses all over the place. Given how much Cyberpunk tends to lean on the identity of the corporations, like they've got these little sort of logos plastered all over
including a giant NCT center.
Yeah, the ones close to you are just as readable as the ones far away. There's very little sense of...
The ones close to you are mostly in Chinese or Japanese.
Yeah, I'm not feeling it. A couple of flying cars and a very generic cityscape. It's a disappointing cover. Like, I think the old Cyberpunk Green had a better sort of vibe to it, even though it was completely mental.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem to have any overriding theme other than the city is here. It is bright and twinkly, and people have guns.
Yeah.
Like, you can lean on the 4-decade-old iconography for Blade Runner as much as you want, but it doesn't really speak to a grander whole anymore. It's just
put in a rocker boy, put in Johnny Silverhand, put in a journo or a newscaster or something. But this is a very generic cyberpunk character. I mean, I know this is cyberpunk, the granddaddy of this sort of game, but this couldn't be a more generic character that they've chosen. And they're dressed in a very understated way. Really, there's no neon, there's no heavy augmentation, there's nothing particularly interesting about them. It's a bit of a meh cover. I hope there's a special edition that has Keanu Reeves in the front of it.
I think that'll be a particularly special edition, because I'm pretty sure Hollywood doesn't let you hire out the likenesses of those kinds of people.
Well, having invoked Internet Jesus, we should probably move on to some other sort of other setting books that are coming out. So you've got a couple, don't you?
Yes. So in our endless quest to blame Critical Role for all of problems, last time we launched ourselves at the throat of the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, and how it was, clogging up the tightly packed release schedule of WotC. In the time since, WotC have revealed what the next setting that is very specifically not being delayed because of the Critical Role setting, Theros, the full title, Mythic Odysseys of Theros, a sort of classical Greek setting taken from the Magic the Gathering department.
Right, so this is like their Ravnica setting book. This is something that's drawing from a previously sort of explored setting in the Magic CCG, but now we've got an RPG book. And you say classically Greek, but I look at that cover and I really like this cover. And I've seen the bigger piece of artwork that it's drawn from. But what I really like about this cover is it sells me on. Here's a very interesting thing. It's a Hydra, and it's facing off against some sort of ghost spirit, space ghost, Hades apparition. But it's got lots of things happening in it. For me, though, the thing that really makes it work is that it has how do I put it? The typography is kind of really calling back to the Thor movie that everyone liked.
Thor Ragnarok. Yeah, that was a very good movie.
And the colours are there, and it's, instead of it being sort of Ionic columns and people in togas, it's Greek legend, like, here's some crazy beasts from beyond your wildest imagination, and they're going to cause you no end of trouble. Now that's the alternative cover we're discussing. That's the one you showed me. The official cover I'm not as wild about, because there's a little too much of the 3D kind of modelling to it. But either way, it's again features a Hydra, and it shows me something about the setting that I kind of think I know something about it, and I can imagine adventures there. So what do you think? Is this are they wise to draw down more of their kind of magic inspired settings?
The Magic the Gathering has for quite a while had a really good pipeline for generating settings, because they made a decision to move away from just setting everything on the same few worlds and really embrace their multiverse. And it over the last 10 years, places like Ravnica, Lorwyn, and Theros have come up again and again. There was also that Aztec one, Ixalan. Yeah, so they've gotten really good at making these kind of iconic settings while still marrying them with the feel of magic, the feel of these great heroes going out, fantastic beasts everywhere, and wizards running around messing it up, while even bigger wizards are in the background having a little soap opera as they try to kill each other despite being immortal and such forth.
Cool. Yeah, it's a good cover. Hopefully it'll be a good setting. I think there's plenty of meat on the bone. I know that there's the Reaper Miniatures Kickstarter from late last year, had a whole sort of Greek subset. So there'll be lots of models coming on stream that would help a GM get a kind of Greek-inspired game off the ground with this. That's not the only setting book that's kind of drawing from a CCG, though, is it?
Oh, yes. So it turns out that Fantasy Flight are still in the RPG business, but also kind of in the card game RPG business, as they've announced another supplement for their in-house system Genesis. It's based on the Keyforge CCG, which we have reviewed on the podcast. Link in the show notes. And this one's a little interesting because it coincided with the announcement of the second expansion for Keyforge as well.
So what's the? I didn't think Keyforge really had a setting to draw from. My brief encounter with it sort of gave me the impression that there were some factions, yes, but it was kind of hard to, unlike Magic settings, if you kind of read through the cards in a release, you kind of get a sense of a place. I remember following the old Weatherlight saga pretty closely back in the day. I didn't really get the same impression that Keyforge had anything that unified it as a setting.
I don't think it has yet. It is Keyforge is still sort of leaning on it's a bunch of wizards summoning monsters in a great arena. So that's still sort of the focus of it dramatically, but it is building a setting through flavor text and the 5 color. It's still 5 colors, or was it 7? Oh, maybe I do need to go back to listeners. Please go back and listen to our review of Keyforge explaining all the stuff and show me how little I've learned.
Okay, well, let's move on to the last piece, which is an interesting tale from the loop, as it were. You might remember the little Scandinavian RPG, The Could, from a couple of years ago. It was a bit of a sleeper hit, riding on the coattails of things like Stranger Things.
Yeah, I think it came out slightly before Stranger Things, in one of those lovely instances of parallel evolution.
Yeah, and it was pretty successful back in the day. So successful, in fact, that it was picked up it was licensed by Amazon, who have now announced that they're doing a TV show based on it on Amazon Prime. And on the back of that, to promote it, they're releasing a new Tales from the Loop starter box set for the RPG. So you've got this interesting kind of loop, I suppose, and you've got a little RPG that gets licensed, becomes a show. The show is with a big sort of player in streaming, and they're putting out a starter set to reintroduce players to the game and presumably to bring on board people who find the game through the show. Yeah. And of course there'll be fans of the game who are going to find out about the show. So
they're certainly doing a lot better about this than D&D itself is.
Yeah, there's you were saying, you said to me before that there was all sorts of talk about a D&D TV show, going how far back? Decades now?
At least a decade.
It's prior to Game of Thrones?
I'm not sure, but Game of Thrones has sort of made it look rather silly at this point. That not even like in the '80s, they managed to put out 3 terrible movies without even blinking, and now there's been nothing for years. I would accept another terrible 80s quality fantasy schlock bit from D&D rather than waiting, another 10 years for a premium Witcher knockoff, essentially.
Wow. I guess not every company can be good at everything. WotC have dipped their toe into this.
But it seems that what was the company's name again?
Who are putting out Tales from the Loop? Yeah. They are called Free League.
Ah, yes.
It
certainly seems that Free League have picked the right horse in this race, and as a result, they're going to be ahead of the curve. And maybe in 40 years, it'll all be Tales from the Loop clones, and D&D will be a forgotten memory. Amazon have done worse.
An interesting future to contemplate. Mm-hmm. Well, that's been the news for this show, for this segment. We've obviously just touched on the larger sort of head above the parapet stuff. But if there's anything else you think we should have talked about, do drop us a line. There's a whole bunch of ways you can find us online, isn't there, Shane?
Yes, we have our speak pipe, as you've seen earlier in the episode. And as of this recording, we have managed to make good on Mr. Miyagi-Oda's suggestion, and we are setting up a Discord. There will also be a link to that in the show notes, and we have created a couple of ghetto channels so that you common plebs can come and speak to us and tell us how wonderful we are.
Just because you've got a purple name on the server doesn't make you a king, okay? We have a different person who's king. We'd be delighted to see you on the Discord server, where you can come and talk to us about all the different topics we tend to cover. You can find links to the show. You can talk directly to the hosts or chat among yourselves. We're also on Facebook. We are on Spotify. We're on Twitter. We're on YouTube.
Yep.
Where we're kind of archiving shows now. If you'd like to listen to us on any of those services, and there's a whole bunch more. I found out we were on Stitcher the other day. Oh. I don't even know what Stitcher is. But tell you what, here's an interesting thing. If you come to the Discord server, tell us where you first heard the Adventuring Party, what service you heard it through, or where you first found us. And we can sort of make a little game of that. We'll gather some statistics. But I think there's nothing else news-wise from you, Shane, is there?
Other than telling people to get their pitchforks and torches to run these horrible critical hole heathens out of our gaming. Other than that, I think we're fine.
Okay, well, in that case, we look forward to hearing from you soon. We have I don't know. So this is actually going out after Paddy's Day, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
So never mind all of that. So we look forward to hearing from you soon, and in the meantime, There's no such news as bad news if there are miniatures or cards involved. And on that note, I'm going to say this party's over. You've been listening to The Adventuring Party. You can find us at theadventuringparty.net. There you'll find show notes for the episode you just listened to, and you can find links to other places on the internet where we tend to hang out. We are on Facebook at The Adventuring Party. You can follow us on Twitter at AdventuringPTY, or if you head for YouTube, you can search for The Adventuring Party. If you'd like to shout at us, then head over to speakpipe.com/The Adventuring Party and leave a short message. If you want to contact us by email, send us a note to party@theadventuringparty.net. Now, this whole kit and caboodle has been released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike version 3 license. Anyways, give us a like, give us a subscribe, please share this episode or any other episode you've liked with your friends, and we hope we'll see you back here next week.